Okay, who's going to start first?
I heard about if you want to learn more about permaculture, you have to join a kind of a PDC, permaculture design course. Have you ever heard about that? I'm curious about what kind of topic that we're talking about.
I've never attended a permaculture design course, but there are some that are run in Taiwan. Are you talking about run from a university or run by individuals? Okay, well, I assume there are probably agricultural courses at universities that go on to some of the same topics about water conservation or some things like that. But I know specifically there are permaculture design conferences that are here in Taiwan. One of the places is at Garden City, and I think that's in, I want to say Taichung County or something like that. But if you want more information on that, you can come to the Facebook group, and there are people that, I specifically said on the Facebook group, hey everyone, I'm giving a very basic introduction to permaculture. I hope some of you will come to the speech so you can answer these very specific questions. I've never been to one of the design courses, and off the top of my head, I can't think who runs them, but there are some in Taiwan. Run in Chinese and English.
I'd like to ask you one question. Okay, so let's say I have a normal farm, and I want to transform my normal farm to a farm like this one. I have to ask myself, how much does it cost? Can you say something about that? Cost and benefit analysis of this.
So you have a regular farm. You have a monoculture farm.
Let's say like a farm like 99% people in the world have.
Well, according to the Japanese guy Fukuoka, he said you would have a 10% loss when you wanted to change over. So whatever you're making, you lose 10% of that when you changed over. Other people said it could be as much as like 50% loss changing over, or more. Like there are some people that said you would go from growing food to not growing any food at all. I think that's one of the biggest things. I was thinking about that. As far as specific money amounts, I have no idea. But I was thinking about that when I was writing the MRT today. I was thinking about, like in Nebraska, a giant 1,000-hectare corn farm. How would they change that into a permaculture farm? Well, number one, you couldn't just do it. You'd have to take small pieces of it and start to change those piece by piece. By first stop growing corn on them and start growing something else to replenish the topsoil. You might have to go in and specifically look for, instead of where, like there used to be a small creek, and then they diverted the water into channels, right? I've heard about people that go back and actually find where the old creek bed is and stop diverting that water so it goes into a more natural channel, and then starting to do water channeling off of that. But obviously it would be probably take 10 or more years to go from regular farming to permaculture farming if you had to switch over, and it would probably cost a lot because you have to bring in different stuff. But on the other hand, you're also saving a lot. If you can go from using a lot of money to buy chemical fertilizers and completely stop buying chemical fertilizers, or if you used to use mechanical tilling machines, mechanical weeding machines, mechanical sprayers, mechanical watering machines, and all this different stuff, you could stop using those and stop using the oil and electricity and related repair costs that go along with them. You'd also save money. I assume there are probably studies that have been done on that, but I haven't looked into that question specifically. Did you want to add to that?
Because this idea looks, on paper looks good, but it's not some kind of like a utopia, because people are trying to improve their skills in farming like during the centuries, and now this theory is talking about like let's go to the farming like it was like 5,000 years ago. But people developed some kind of advanced tools to help them to maintain high producing of the crops and everything. Let's say like they want to go back to try to find the original creek, but people who made these channels have done that because they want to transfer water to the crops, because during the particular parts of years where there are no rain, no nothing, people have to have some kind of water source or something like this.
Understood. And it's not just for water and stuff like that, but it's also the tilling. When 100 years ago, if you asked a farmer, why do you till, they would say, because the farmer before me tilled, and the farmer before me tilled, and the farmer before that person tilled, and the farmer before that person tilled. I think what we have to look at is what is the cost of the farming methods that we have had. I can't remember the specific figure, but something over the United States farming areas have lost something over 50% of their topsoil, and I think it's as high as like 85% of their topsoil. All of this rich earth has just run off into the rivers and down out into the oceans, to where now you have to use many gallons or thousands of gallons of fertilizers, herbicides, new methods and new things like that. I think what we're finding now is that at some point along the line mistakes were made. So it wasn't as if everything was constantly getting better. Maybe things were constantly getting more, but now we've found that that's actually leveled off. And we're finding that the land is so degraded that there's just nothing more you can do. You've got to look for a new solution. So I mean, I would point specifically to the university.
Okay, next question.
I'd just like to follow the previous question.
Yes?
All right. We can continue. No, I would like to just ask about the practice, if anybody has any time, just put it in practice, if anybody has ever put it into practice, because as long as I can hear you, it sounds really nice, and actually you made very good points about, for example, about this tree nuts and all the stuff. They are like really nutritious and so on, and actually you're totally right when you're talking that animals prefer, for example, the oak nuts over the corn. That's absolutely true, and I know it from my own experience. But it sounds a little bit difficult to realize it, because, for example, if we are talking about the trees like oak or hickory tree, right? Those trees are huge trees, and actually, if you know something about the trees, and you ever been to a real forest, you can realize that the trees like oaks, they can't grow up just next to each other. Not because they are just big, but simply there's some kind of chemical reaction in the ground that they just push each other aside. So if you put just 5 oaks, there only one will survive. It will simply kill the 4 others. So this is also a question about efficiency. How efficient can be that kind of that kind of farming might be, and this is one. And one more thing about this tilling, if you are not tilling the ground, all the plants will simply die. Why they do die? Because they don't have oxygen in the ground. Then you can say that in nature it's not happening. No, it's not happening because of the trees. That's what the trees do, with their roots. They just really, this is natural ploughing, they plough the ground, with their roots. And if you don't have a tree on a certain area and you don't, cultivate the ground, first it will erode in very short time, like 2 to 3 years, it's becoming a desert. That's what is happening, for example, in Hebei province in China, or especially around Beijing, when they have 5,000 trees and they just water them every day 2 times. So without it, it's just a desert. So how the people can manage.
Well, I think that's probably a few different questions there. Specifically about tilling, worms will aerate the soil. And yeah, trees are also important, but
But without trees, if you just leave it everything to the warmth, there is the sun, there is rain, and simply they won't survive there. They won't survive there. This is sounds nice. They get drowned. Not drowned. They just drop out. They will just die out.
So you tell me, how do worms survive then?
I mean, if you don't have trees, they can survive.
Why are you not having trees?
But if you have trees, these big trees, they just need space, and if you want to just live on the trees, on the nuts from the trees and so on, I think that is pretty much impossible. So I'm asking if anybody had ever really tried to do it, that put in practice.
Yeah, there's probably a permaculture farm in every country in the world. The larger countries would have multiple permaculture farms, both from universities and individuals working on all different kinds of things. I think the American Smith, who I talked about at the beginning of my speech, probably worked through a lot of those issues when he was talking about growing trees and pasture crops for different purposes. Also, the Japanese farmer, Fukuoka, would have seen that, this tree does this and these plants will live next to this tree, and he's not tilling anything or doing anything, but he's got like a rich, vibrant multitude of plants, edible,
He really put it in practice.
medicinal.
He really did it.
Sure, every permaculture farm puts these things into practice.
No, I'm not talking about some farms, because if this university makes some certain kind of project, of course it works very well because it's in certain condition. They are just protected. There's not like a.
Well, actually, no. I mean, let's see. The city of San Diego, I think it's either San Diego or San Francisco, they're building food forests all around the cities to feed the people inside of the cities. And we're not talking about specific conditions. We're talking about on the edges of the cities. Or inside the cities with vertical farms and stuff
They
like that.
don't till the ground.
No, they use like raised beds and mulching and other things like that. No tilling.
And they can sustain the population
They do.
just on this.
Yeah, they do.
They don't buy any.
If you really want more information on that kind of stuff, you should contact the actual permaculture farms, or contact some of the people in the forum group that I run. But I'm not really giving a nuts and bolts, or I'm not giving anything more than a nuts and bolts speech. This is just an introduction to permaculture.
Okay, any more questions?
You mentioned about the Class C boats.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm curious about is that they would choose the same season seeds or different season seeds, and how do they do that one? They will do something, cover it, or just throw it?
I guess just throw them. You can just throw them. You don't need to cover them. They'll erode with rain and the weather. I didn't mention, but this is a favorite thing to use by guerrilla farmers. Guerrilla farmers are people who like to plant stuff in places in cities where the government won't allow people or stuff to be planted. They just take these clay balls and throw them into fields, and however long it takes. So I'm sure there are specifics. I'm sure it's not like, oh, let's put carrot seeds and walnuts and everything that's different inside of one ball. There are probably very specific things. You probably also have to know what's going to grow well in that area. But with rain and sun erosion, they just erode into the ground and start have nutrients for themselves and start growing. I've never made them myself, so I don't know exactly the techniques that go into it. Other questions?
I have a question. Well, how big should a farm be to sustain through the year 4 to 5 people, let's say a family? How should it be a hectare? Should it be a hectare of land and basically treated in this
I guess it
permaculture
depends
way?
on how much of the land is taken up by the house and other outbuildings. But if you're talking about there's the house and the outbuildings, and then there is the land specifically for growing food. It also depends on what you're eating. I mean, if you're growing the food to be fed to animals, then you probably need more space. But if you're just growing simple fruit and vegetable crops, I think you don't need more than an acre.
Acre.
per family. Depends on the size of the family and how much they eat. But
So basically, when it starts, this is like a sort of agricultural perpetuum mobile. Like it just works on its own.
right. Well, I mean, with little prods and pushes, especially if you have animals, you gotta move them to the right place in the right time and stuff like that. But there's a, you know, you asked about have people put this kind of thing into practice, and it made me think of this guy Joel Salatin, who lives in Virginia in the United States, and he calls himself a dirt farmer. He calls himself a dirt farmer or a sun farmer, something like that. His whole thing, grass farmer.
Is it grass?
Grass farmer, and his whole thing is like health of the soil, just using the sun to grow grass and clover and different ground cover crops, and I think he grows a bunch of other stuff too. But it's this whole process of like what goes first. The cows go first. The cows eat the ground cover. Then the cows poop on the ground. Then they move the cows to another area. After 3 days, flies have laid eggs inside of the cow pads, the cow poop. And after 3 days, the fly larvae are ready to hatch, but haven't hatched yet. So then they bring in the chickens, and the chickens go around and they eat the larvae and some grass. Chickens actually do eat some grass. And then they poop again, which is very high in nitrogen, and then they move the chickens, and that high nitrogen fertilizer with all of the other fertilizer that's there from the cows as well makes the grass shoot right up again in another. Who asked the question? in another. Sorry, I'm kind of answering your question too. In another week, so then you can move the cows back again. So it is a perpetual system, and I don't remember what your question was.
Yeah,
that's
it's just like a perpetuum mobile, you know, like once you start running, it just runs on its own. But okay, so it still needs some activity here and there to maintain.
Right, and there are certain things that can happen, like you're talking about. Do you grow all oak trees, or how many oak trees can you fit onto your farm, or which things are going to start producing food sooner, or something like that. This guy, Smith, I think is his name, he was growing one kind of tree. I mean, he got really onto this one kind of tree. I think it was hickory or something like that. And then there was a fungus, a blight that came through and killed like all of his trees, and he had to sort of rethink, what kind of variety of different things am I going to do? Not just grow one kind of tree. Right. More questions?
I think the point is that you always have to have some kind of human interference in the nature in order to have a successful farm. Maybe this sustainable perpetual mobile farm, maybe in some certain conditions can exist. But you have various climate conditions in different countries. So maybe in some part of the world that can be made. But I think generally we are just talking about really nice story.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't see why it can't be made in every place in the country. Of course, they're all going to look different, and they're all going to have different. They're all going to have different crops.
Let's take Israel. I was in Israel 2 years ago. So Israel, like 70 years ago, it was almost all the desert. When Israelis came, they have also money, they invest in techniques, but now you have they are one of the biggest fruit exporters in the world, and they are lived in a desert a couple of decades ago. But only with human interference they succeed.
Yeah, I didn't say anything about. Obviously.
And in big human interference.
Yeah. Okay. Well, now it sounds like you're disagreeing with this guy Fukuoka, which had one very specific idea of no interference farming. But every permaculture farm they're very labor intensive. I mean, it's like replace the machines with people, and you actually have to go out there, and you have to spend a lot of time like looking at the land and testing the soil and making sure that the water is distributed properly. And then you have to make sure you're planting the right plants and that they're staying healthy. And if this plant isn't staying healthy, you need to change it for a different kind of plant. Of course, this isn't like, you know, wave a magic wand and suddenly you've got beauty and food. You know, this person with this permaculture farm that I'm passing around, she's looking for people to come and work on her farm. She's not looking for people just to come and watch it grow. She's looking for people to come and work. I mean, all of these things, whether it's building an earthship, which is the house, or the outbuildings, or working on the water, or working on the trees, or the smaller plants, they're all, you know, labor intensive. I guess the idea from this guy Fukuoka is more of a philosophical idea that nature is able to work by itself without human intervention. Whether that means you're able to, you know, grow food from that, or food for animals, or otherwise, that's a different matter, right?
The point is, if I'm a farmer, I don't want to deal with the philosophy. I want to deal, you know, with my, you know, to sustain my farm. You know.
Well, maybe that's what's kind of lacking from modern monoculture farming, though, is a lack of philosophy. I mean, that's where you take monocultures and change them to polycultures, where you have a guy like Joe Salatin, whose philosophy is not that he's a chicken farmer. I mean, he grows chickens, ducks, turkeys, pigs, cows, you name it, he grows it. Okay, but he doesn't say, I am a chicken farmer. He doesn't say, I am a potato farmer. He says, I am a grass farmer. Okay, this is a different kind of philosophy. The philosophy is there's a relationship between the sun and the green plants. And that's the relationship that starts the life of all animals, and including ourselves as an animal. And unless you have, you know, healthy plants, really, truly healthy plants, then you don't have healthy people or healthy animals.
No, I'm definitely for a healthy farm is okay, but just, you know, I think we.
Yeah, but I'm not satisfied to say it's okay to have unhealthy farms and unhealthy people. I'm not satisfied.
No, you're right.
Yeah, soil depletion is a very big problem within modern farming. Soil depletion.
Yeah.
It's very poor in minerals and
Yeah, I mean,
trace minerals.
if it keeps going this way, the United States will not be able to grow anymore.
No, I think that's something
it's middle-
that has
it's
to be
middle
done
growing.
in order to improve that. But I think we have to be like reasonable, you know, in this kind of thing. Okay, to have maybe some like new technologies, also with some like as you say, like some philosophy before. But the point is that I think we have to combine this like old knowledge and new knowledge, because we cannot just limit ourselves to like a new technologies or the old one.
Yeah, I don't think anyone, you know, people who did this are not trying to just get rid of what we would call modern technology. They're trying to think about how can we use it more efficiently.
Okay.
Or can we possibly get rid of some of them? Can we get rid of the more destructive ones, right? And a lot of times when you find, say I've got a bunch of land. Now, I've got cancer because I've been working with these chemicals my whole life. I don't want my children to get cancer, so I want to start to make a change. Usually when they do start to make a change, they don't turn their whole farm into an organic permaculture farm. They start with a very small piece, and they work from there. So you might have a farmer who grows both conventional crops and organic, you know, permaculture crops.
I think the idea is more like to work on the forest concept. Like a forest just takes care of itself, but instead of having all these random cool plants that don't really do anything for human purposes, then the idea is just to make them all somehow benefit us. Like, okay, there's the clover and stuff like that that has to take care of stuff, but you know, instead of growing some random grass, instead you grow lettuce there. And it's just sort of like making sure this forest everything will produce food instead of having all sorts of other plants as well.
Right, I mean, over the last, say, 60, 70 years, especially Americans got really into growing front lawn grass. The Willamette Valley, where I'm from, is the world's leading producer of grass seed for lawns, parks, golf courses, and things like that. We grow grass. Grass that grows like that tall and is not really good for anything except for laying on or playing golf on, right? And that's a whole giant valley that's filled with that. And actually the farmers, the only way to deal with, you grow the grass for the seed. You take the seeds, you harvest the seeds because that's what you're going to export to the whole world. But then the only way to get rid of that grass is they burn it. So then the whole valley in the summer turns into it's a self-induced forest fire, which pretty much everyone in the Willamette Valley has some form of, it's called hay fever. It's allergies based on the burning of grass. And like you're saying, for me it's a wonderful thing to see change from somebody having a front lawn, which I remember having a front lawn and a back lawn and a side lawn, and what was my relationship was once a week I had to mow it. I had to go out with my gas-powered mower and mow it, and I would get allergies, not only from the smoke coming out of the gas mower, but also from the grass seed that's being turned up, the pollens and stuff like that. The only other really use for it is people like to sunbathe on it, or and they water it too. You got to water it all the time to keep it green, because if it turns brown, the city will get on you and say you've got a fire hazard in your front yard. So people started to change these front lawns into front of the house gardens, basically, or you can replace grass with other ground cover, which never needs to be mowed. And you can even incorporate it into things that birds can come and eat and stuff like that. I mean, it's just sort of like there are a lot of ideas out there where you can change systems that don't even really make a whole lot of sense, like having a front lawn.
Right.
Or using a giant area of food production land for growing grass for golf courses. You can change that into something that can sustain people. Okay?
Okay, we have maybe one more question.
No more golf! Actually, I love golf. That's a fun game.
Dario, last question?
No, thank you.
Anybody?
I had enough.
Anybody? No?
Is there any consensus in the permaculture community about what is the variety of vegetables and fruits that we need to eat to be healthy? Like if we want to have this area and basically be self-sustainable based on living from it, what is the variety of things that should be growing there?
If it's completely self-sustainable, I think you need the widest variety that you can possibly fit in, because you need vitamins, minerals, fats, protein, or you need to be able to synthesize protein from certain things that you eat, etc., etc. I mean, if you want to be completely self-sustainable, you're probably going to have to not eat specific things, like no more chocolate or no more olive oil, because you can't have it that I grow cacao trees and olive trees and all of these things on one space of land. That's kind of why I also said that you're going to have different permaculture farms will look different in different areas, because some places you can grow rice well, some places you can't grow rice well, or some places you can grow cacao trees and some places you can't. Now, it doesn't have to be like one country can only grow one thing, because you have different elevations also. And with different elevations, you can have different moisture levels or temperatures and things like that. So Taiwan is actually a really interesting place. The more I find out, the more I understand that Taiwan actually grows almost everything, like even including wheat and coffee and olives, though I'm not sure. Olives?
Yeah.
Like everything almost. So
How about cheese?
cheese. Well, there's Chulu farms. There are dairy cow farms
There are
in,
goat
in
farms.
Taiwan,
Mhm.
but do they make cheese? No, I don't think so. Because it would be kind of, at that point, a waste of the milk just to make cheese. The milk and the milk is all, well, it's not all pastured. You go, I've been to Chulu, and you see these beautiful rolling hills of grass where you think the cows are eating, but on the other hand, I've never seen the cows eating the grass. They're probably eating seeds and beans behind closed doors.
Okay, thank you, Ethan, for your wonderful speech.
Thank you, everyone.